Top of the morning, and the NCAA has weighed in with the woke in the week. Today, the NCAA confirming it, this was the other day, confirming it will pull events from states with bills banning trans students from participating in school sports, on their terms.
Guess we're not going to South Dakota.
The ACLU trumpeting the NCAA's decision, saying state lawmakers take note discriminating against trans youth is wrong, against the law, and costly. Notre Dame Professor Patrick Deneen responded to that. Once the left was fierce in its defense of the people against the powerful moneyed interests. Now they're on the same page. Conservatives must now fight against the oligarchy on behalf of ordinary citizens who know that biological men competing against women is wrong. Yes, well, I agree with that.
It's also a safety hazard.
Will it come to pass? I mean, this is obviously targeting, there's 30-plus states that have legislation pending, if not moved, like Arkansas, Tennessee, that would ban essentially what we're talking about, men competing in women's sports. And so what is a state to do? Well, South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster had this reaction to the NCAA.
No, it doesn't. I think the NCAA ought to mind their own business. If they want to pass laws, they need to run for office.
Why does everybody in South Carolina sound like Fritz Hollings? For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Dave Seminara, former diplomat, author of Footsteps of Federer, and the forthcoming book, Mad Travelers, a tale of wanderlust, greed, and the quest to reach the ends of the earth. Dave, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me back on the show.
You're a bit frustrated with the corporate products, corporately produced products you can no longer use as well, out of a sense of not wanting to participate with this sort of anti-intellectual silliness.
Yes, products and also sports leagues, as you're pointing out.
Right.
I'm a sports nut too. I mean, my house is unfortunately full of products made by increasingly woke corporations, and I'm also a sports nut. And I'm upset because I would actually like to go to a Rays game. I live down here in Tampa Bay. I'd like to go to a Rays game, but I'm angry at Major League Baseball. Now I'm angry at the NCAA. I'm getting angry at everyone. I think we sort of need to take a step back here and find out what is going on. Why are companies doing this? I'm sorry, go ahead, Dan.
No, I was going to say, and what do you suspect? What's the reason?
Well, here's what I suspect, a couple of different things going on. First of all, I think they see the example of companies like Nike and Twitter and others who have gone woke, earlier than many of the others, and they haven't suffered anything for it. In fact, their business has increased. I mean, I remember thinking, when Nike was lavishing money on Colin Kaepernick years ago and other companies, I thought, oh, they're going to pay for this. There's going to be hell to pay. Their stock price will go down, their revenue will go. It hasn't. Same thing with Twitter. They can go as woke as they want, and they still keep making more money, and their share price keeps going up. So first of all, companies have seen that there's really no price to pay for going woke. They make liberals very happy. I mean, I think liberals demand a lot more of the companies that they patronize than conservatives do. Liberals demand that companies share their values, and they bully and boycott them if they don't. Whereas conservatives, I think we make our consumer decisions largely based upon the quality of the product or the service. And we don't really pay too much attention to what's going on sort of behind the scenes. So I think that's part of the dynamic. I think the other part of it is you've got these millionaire CEOs who basically the circles that they travel in, they get a lot of social capital, a lot of cultural capital out of being liberal and woke. It makes them feel good about themselves. If you make $10 million per year, and those are the sort of elite sort of circles you travel in. You want to be out at the cocktail party saying, oh, isn't this great? We're standing up for the transgender community, or we're doing this or that or the other thing. I think it makes them feel really good about themselves. So they see no downside to going woke, and I think they also they get something out of it in the circles they travel in. I don't know. Do you agree?
Yeah. And what's concerning, too, is that Saturday Zoom conference that they had with 120 different CEOs and people that own media, like newspapers and television, and that they're teaming up to attack states. That's pretty scary.
Yeah, and I would say too, one other dynamic that's happening too is I think a lot of these companies have made the calculation that conservatives and Republicans are like just basically older white people, and that's not the demographic they're going for. They want younger, like every company in the world is striving for that younger consumer because they want to build that brand loyalty from a younger age. So companies are thinking about their strategies in terms of wooing young, diverse consumers, not like old white guys who tend to be the Fox News demographic, right? So I think that they think they can just take us for granted and just shoot for that younger demographic, which tends to be more liberal, right? Is that part of it?
I think that's part of it. I mean, part of it is even the companies that aren't really, that's not really their market position. I think of big banks, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan. I mean, it's not, a bunch of millennials that whose money they're managing. But it's the clientele. So much of the clientele, wealthy clientele, champagne socialists, they want to be hip and cool and in the now, like some of these CEOs do too. So it's sort of a bit of self-reinforcement, I think. And so then what's the response, I guess, and where does the response come from? It seems to me that most of the big companies we're talking about, the big players we're talking about, are rent seekers. They have a lot of skin in the political game and the policy game by necessity, in part, and by opportunity, in part. And so it was interesting. I looked up this study that was done by Zippia, which is a career advice website. They analyzed contributions from employees at the 250,000 biggest companies in America. Looked at 30 million donations over a 10-year period, 2007 to 2017. And this, I think, this trend I'm about to tell you is probably only increased over the last 3 or 4 years. Then the report, they took the 30 most politically active companies on the Fortune 500, ranked them in order of their campaign contributions, and then distributed, Republican versus Democrat. Of the top 30 most politically active in terms of money given via employees, Fortune 500 companies, 20 of them give more money to Democrats than Republicans. So the Republican Party, it seems to me, has a market opportunity. And that is to say, in the grand scheme of things, even those top 30, the amount of money they give doesn't really amount to much in terms of the cost of campaigns these days, in addition to the ability to raise a lot of money through small dollar donations online, as we've seen in the recent half a dozen campaign cycles. Tell corporate America to go pound it. We don't want your money. We're not taking any money. We're not soliciting your money. We'll return any money that we're given. I mean, obviously, if there's a Bernie Marcus at Home Depot that wants to, align and is down with the fight, and it's an entrepreneur who struck it, fine, okay. There are exceptions, making sort of a general statement. But make it clear to the public that the left is the party of big business. Big business is a party of the left. We want nothing to do with it. We are going to stake our claim. We're going to make our permanent residence, not our summer residence, on Main Street, and we're going to go up against K Street and Wall Street. I just think presenting a moral clarity and a simple binary to the public, maybe that's a way to provide that sort of cost to these woke corporations that's going to be very hard to provide, one conservative op-ed at a time.
It could be. I mean, it could be. I just don't know. Can we count on the Republican Party to have some backbone here? Because this is a watershed moment. These Georgia boycotts, I mean, it's so unfair. I mean, calling this law repeatedly and brainwashing people into thinking there's something racist about this law. I mean, this article that I wrote for the Wall Street Journal, a week or two ago about the woke corporations, I cannot tell you I've never received more feedback on something I've written in my entire life. 80% of it was, people saying, right on, I totally agree with you. And do you have a list of companies we should boycott? But then maybe 15 or 20% are people just sending me nasty hate mail saying, how could you support this racist law, and so on and so forth. People are completely brainwashed. And the question now is, I should say some people on the left are brainwashed. But the question is now, does the Republican Party have the backbone to stand up to these corporations, or are they going to capitulate? I mean, let's face it, this is a party that has really been trying to kowtow to corporate interests for a very long time. And now the question is, are we going to be the party of, the interests of middle-class America and working-class America, or are they going to basically give in? I don't know what's going to happen. And what do you think?
Well, I don't know either. I just say there's an opportunity there. I mean, right? Do Republicans have the stomach for this? I have no idea. I'm actually rather pessimistic that most of them do, but I actually think some of the leading lights of the party at present do, and that starts with Ron DeSantis in Florida.
Right.
And it's been evidenced by what he's actually done. It's not just speechifying, which is what you get from Senate Republicans. It's
right.
He issued an executive order banning critical race theory from indoctrination in K through 12 schools in Florida. I mean, that's the sort of thing that just should be happening everywhere, but it's only happening with Ron DeSantis in Florida. Maybe Greg Abbott would do some of that stuff. I don't know. Kristi Noem, she's obviously a bit wishy-washy on the NCAA. So, but I think then it becomes a question, and this is perhaps the way you have to sell it. You have to appeal to their electoral interests. If you don't do that, you won't have a party. You're not, because who will you represent if you're not willing to go to the mat for middle income families that, form the Trump coalition? Then you don't have a constituency, you don't have a party, at least you'll never have a governing party. So then you can either, take the window or the stairs here. I
know. I just think about things, I cannot control what the Republican Party does. There aren't enough Ron DeSantis out there. Josh Hawley, I think, is another good one who shows some promise. There's not enough of those guys out there. I can only think about what can I do as a person, as a consumer, and I'm trying to make much more careful decisions with my spending power in the products that I buy. And I'm looking at these companies' websites, and I'm looking at their Twitter feeds, and I'm looking at these letters that these CEOs are signing, and I'm paying very close attention to which ones I have in my investment portfolio too. Like PayPal's another one. PayPal, I own PayPal stock, and they're part of this Georgia boycott crowd, along with Delta and Coca-Cola and all these other companies. And guess what? I do not want to patronize these companies anymore. And unless they feel it from us, the consumers, I just don't think it's ever going to change. They need to actually see their share price going down. They need to see their sales going down. They can't just keep taking half of their customer base for granted anymore.
He is Dave Seminara, former diplomat, author of Footsteps of Federer and the forthcoming book, Mad Travelers, A Tale of Wanderlust, Greed, and the Quest to Reach the Ends of the Earth. Dave, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You've made the switch, and it feels so good. You've switched to Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, my name is Lily. My mom and dad used to fight about money all the time. Then one day, I heard them talking about this guy, some uncle I never knew.